everybody, this is last session today, before dinner, before our work, so. So I'm Hironobu Takagi for IB Research Tokyo. And so this session is accessible multimedia, and we have 4 presentations, 4 communication papers. And the first one is supporting engagement and comprehension online. Online through multiple means of expression. So presenter is Boris Goldowsky from CAST. Please come up stage.
All right. So 4 o'clock, it's the home stretch, right? All right, so the alternate title of this paper is What Happens When You Allow Drawings and Audio Recording as Part of Online Discussion. That's the what we're looking at here. It's actually, this is a small slice of a much bigger project. So lots of people from CAST involved, as well as my co-author, Peggy, Coyne, who couldn't be here. But lots of people at CAST and various partners in this work. If you want to see information about the larger project, there's a website, cet.cast.org, or you can look at their Twitter stream, cet_UDO. We'll tell you some of the work more generally that's being done by this grant. It's a U.S. Department of Education funded grant. So the UDO in that name is this large reading intervention that we're putting together. It's designed for middle school students. So these are 12 to 14-year-olds who have trouble reading. They're primarily in remedial reading classrooms. So these are kids where traditional reading education really has not worked for them. And the idea of the project is to re-engage them emotionally with the idea of reading by providing a large variety of high-interest text and content that's not simplified or dumbed down, but is highly supported so that they can be successful in engaging with the text. And it's very much a student-driven kind of free exploration environment. So I have a screenshot up on the screen of the what we call the explore area of the site, and it shows a lot of thumbnails of different reading that's available, different reading matter that's available to students. And they can freely choose from that both projects by their classmates and readings from our content partners. So we have a variety of organizations who've contributed content to the project. Some is written as instructional material for students, for instance, by Scholastic. Some is written by students. We're partnering with StoryShare and Young Writers Project. And some of it's content that's actually written for adults, like stories from Yahoo Tech and Scientific American. So we try to collect as wide a variety of topics as we can. And a lot of this is written specifically intended to inspire discussion and reactions. So as an example here, a article called Junk Food, Should Schools Sell It? Kind of provides a couple of viewpoints on a topic, and then right alongside it we have the discussion area. That's the focus of what I'm talking about today. The other thing that students can do based on the things they read is create projects, and these become kind of fodder for more discussion by their classmates. So there would be the same discussion area alongside the student projects as you see alongside the articles. Okay, so step back. Why would we want to allow drawing and audio recording as part of the discussion as opposed to more traditional just including a text area? Several reasons why we think this might be a good idea. As many people have mentioned this week already, giving students choice and letting them direct their own learning is one way to lead to increased motivation. That's fairly well known. Also, we thought removing the barrier of actually having to type out your thoughts might lead to longer and richer responses. There's data to support that in the literature. And also the composing in multiple media can promote engagement, collaboration, including more details and different perspectives in something like a review or a discussion. And also the other way to look at it is that CAST's work is all driven by the Universal Design for Learning framework, which I will say very little about today because I think most of you are familiar with it. But central to that is providing multiple means of action and expression. So if you're familiar with the UDL guidelines, right in the middle there it says, suggests using multiple media for communication and multiple tools for construction and composition for essentially the reasons I just outlined and some others. So this is a test of that idea, kind of putting it into practice and seeing what it looks like. All right, so what does it look like in practice? Here's just a quick screenshot of an article, The Science of Fireworks, and showing what the discussion area looks like before anybody has started a discussion. It has 3 buttons on it that are of kind of equal size and prominence. They say write, draw, and record. So those are the 3 options we offer in the discussion area. If the student chooses to write, they get a kind of standard HTML text area with a couple of supports provided there. So there's some hints, which are kind of context-relevant suggestions for what might make for a productive discussion. Express your opinion, share what you know, things like that. There are also sentence starters, which are just a quick way to get started. The pull-down menu with options like, does anyone understand why? Or, this makes me wonder. So that's the writing area. If you choose instead to draw, our drawing tool is a modified version of an open source drawing tool called SVG Edit. It's scalable vector graphic based, so we can present the resulting drawings at any size, and hopefully they're a little more accessible than a bitmap would be if the student chooses to add text labels and such to their drawings. What we've done is, as a change from the regular SVG Edit product or open source product, is we've changed the interface and simplified it quite a bit, tried to make more salient the kind of most kind of quick, the things you would want the first time you use it, so that there isn't a big learning curve. So this is showing an open panel with various kind of simple shapes that you might want, stars and boxes and triangles and arrows. So we present that right from the start. And I'll show some examples in a moment of what some of the students did with it. And again, the same hints for productive discussion are provided here and also in the audio. So if you choose to record, we have a very simple audio player. Has buttons for record and play and stop. So you can just hit the record button, say what you want to say, preview it with the record before you save. Once again, we have the hints. We also provide a little text box that says add an audio title or description, which we thought might be helpful for somebody who's scanning and wondering whether they want to listen to the audio or somebody who couldn't hear the audio might get a description there, but unfortunately the students did not much use that. So, so the audio tool is, we actually switched between the pilot and final version of this implementation. We started with audio recorder called WAMI, the WAMI project, which is an HTML front end and a hidden actually does the audio capture and upload. But then this year we switched to using regular HTML5, the get user media functionality, which we found is much more usable. It doesn't have as many problems with people getting the permissions set up correctly, but at the expense of compatibility with older browsers. So, but we're happy to see the technology starting to be there to integrate this audio and drawing as well more seamlessly into the regular web application. So this is just to kind of explain, this is a long-running project. This is showing the project phases. We started in 2012 with our initial development. And we've been running kind of successively larger implementations of this whole UDO implementation. We're partway through an efficacy trial now. So the data I have is all of last year's pilot data plus about 2/3 of this year. So what I'll show you is kind of a combination of those. All right, so what did they do with it? There's a couple examples of student work. It's a little small to read there. But on the left you see a discussion stream that was alongside an article about bullying in schools. So the top one has a picture of a girl that says, "Don't bully people." And then there's a picture of a cell phone with a bunch of text messages kind of pouring out of it. One of which says something like, I can't quite read it on the screen, but to paraphrase it, it says like, "Meet me in the parking lot, I'm going to beat you up." And next to that it says, "People should not type this." And another one says, "Stop bullying me." And then there's a couple of text comments very much along the same lines. I think bullying needs to stop, and in my opinion, I think they should not bully others. So it's kind of somewhat representative example of, although we picked it because it had a bunch of drawings in it, they didn't all. On the right, there are two. One of the classes did, the teacher encouraged everyone to go read one of the classic articles we have in there, the short story, The Cask of Amontillado, Edgar Allan Poe. So the top one is, I guess, Montresor saying, "Try this." There's a giant bottle of wine next to him, labeled wine, and then Fortunato being imprisoned was labeled by the student there, and you can see Fortunato almost bricked up in the wall with tears pouring out of his eyes. So those were some nice examples. Overall, since I know you all love to look at data, there are about 6,800 comments in last year's data, 3,600 so far this year. Of those, writing certainly dominates. So 85 and 87% of all those comments in the discussion areas were text comments. Drawing came in at 14 and 10% last year, this year. Audio recording was about 1% last year, 2.6% this year. So a lot of things changed between the 2 years. I can't say definitively why it's so much higher, but my speculation is that it's due to the better ease of use of the HTML5 audio. It just, I think a lot of classrooms just decided they couldn't make the last year's implementation work and stopped trying. Another way to look at it, just about every student made at least one text comment sometime during the year.